it was just a normal day for me, like every other day. I head down to surf at about 7:45, and I got down to the beach. The waves were actually pretty good that day. It was a decent south swell. Not a giant one, not small, but just really fun size. There were head-high sets, maybe a little bit overhead. The crowd was moderate, so I looked down. I saw the left-handers were a little less crowded. I ran down the beach. Anthony was out there, Joe was out there, a lot of the regular crew down there.
I had the day off. We were just gonna go do like a standard cotton session. You were doing SUP. I didn't really feel like stand-up paddling is so hard. I just ride my regular new shortboard. So what, we roll up at like 8 o'clock, something like that, and just pretty chill, kind of like not the best waves, good shape, but it felt kind of like nothing was gonna happen. Like, it's gonna be kind of a boring day. And
so the day was June 2nd. It was a Thursday. I had camp. All my summer stuff started on Monday, so I was really excited when I woke up. I knew there was going to be a really good swell in the water. So it just was the optimum thing to do was go surfing that day. I know I had my time off. I was really excited, and that's all I wanted to do. And talked to Gwyn the night before. Told him, hey, there should be some good sets coming in. I want to get some SUP clips. We haven't done it in a while. We were a little bummed that how many people were out, I remember, and the swell fully wasn't there yet, and the tide was a little too low. But we saw the end had like no one on it, and there were some good waves. So, out we went. We weren't going to go home. It was like a cloudy kind of June gloom day too.
Gloomy weather, always a bad sign, bad vibes. Like 6-7 foot waves, very slow, and
I was kind of thinking, wow, is today like, should we even be filming right now? Like, is it worth filming? We didn't get waves for like 20-30 minutes into the session, and all of a sudden me and Joe kind of got in rhythm. Sets started coming in, the tide flipped, and it was one after another. We're like, are we staying? Are we leaving? Are we staying? I remember we kept going back and forth. We're like, oh, let's stay. Like, let's go. It's getting better. No one's out. People were leaving.
Then, the waves picked up a bit, got some pretty good clips.
saw Jay Real, and me and him too, we were just in like this perfect rotation. We were talking between waves.
We were catching a lot of waves. There was a lot of fun ones inside corners, and I see Anthony on his SUP get a couple really good ones, and we were sort of paddling past each other, having little conversations.
And I remember I got a couple really good ones and started building rhythm. And then I missed a big floater, and I was like, wow, I want to stomp one. Like, next big one, I'm going for it. Everything was going in the session, like, I was on, but a little off, but like 99% on. So I was feeling rhythm, I was stoked. I remember seeing the set come in.
And just like normal, I caught the first wave of a set, and then Anthony caught probably the third wave of the set.
And this one bomb came in. I think it was, as I recall, the biggest wave I saw that morning.
Big set too, and I was paddling, and I remember looking over my shoulder at everyone, but like, does no one see this wave? And like, here this thing comes. The thing was just, I saw it 500 yards out on the horizon. This thing was coming in, just marching. I went over like the third wave in the set. It was still another wave out, and no one was around. I'm like, all right, this is my wave. Came right to me, perfect spot, dropped in. I remember doing a speed check.
Anthony's in the perfect position, right in the slot. He takes off, cranks it off the bottom, does a killer turn.
I was paddling back out. I got to see him drop in, do the first turn, and then set up for the turn where he broke his leg.
The whole thing was like moving towards the bold end of the reef, and I'm like, wow, this one's gonna hit the reef perfect.
He's sort of throwing in the middle section. You don't see that all the time out there. And Anthony lofts his board up onto the lip and sort of free falls with the lip. And when he landed, I remember his back foot, it looked like his back foot slipped off the tail because it looked like he did the splits.
That was pretty crazy because I've seen him land the trick a bunch of times. I've seen him land or fall on that trick a bunch of times, but this time it just seemed a little more extreme. Pretty much came down from the floater. I knew he hurt himself, but didn't think it was as bad as it was.
And I just remember doing the longest bottom turn ever, like just pushing on rail super hard. And I remember transitioning up into the lip, and as I was transitioning and hitting the lip, I said, this one's gonna be nuts. And it was already pitching out, and I just got locked into that perfect 50-50 grind floater projection. I mean, it was a perfect floater until I started coming off.
And I remember I was about 30 yards away. I saw it. I had a front row seat to the whole thing. I thought he might have torn his groin muscle because his legs, it looked like he did the splits.
I don't even know when I really broke my leg. I hit the board, my foot slipped. I might have broke my leg the moment I hit. I really was trying to flex hard as I could and prepare for a landing, but you know, it got a little bit away from me, but I never disconnected from the board. I was always just on my tippy toes connected. So I think when it hit it, boom, snapped my leg fell off, and then I just collapsed into a ball. Either way, I just remember it being the longest fall of my life. Like, on the board, I was thinking, how long am I falling for? Like, this is so bad. Yeah, I remember thinking, wow, this is so bad. Like, how bad is this? And I was like stuck on the board, tumbled forward, wrapped around, and my leg tapped me right in the upper butt, lower back, my heel or something did, I don't know. And that's instantly when I kind of like, holy crap, I'm so hurt. Started to kind of freak out mentally. And this is all underwater still. And I came up and I instantly was just like, I broke my leg.
As soon as Anthony came up, he said, like, oh, I broke my leg. And I kind of giggled and just said, like, yeah, I'm sure you did. That was gnarly.
As I came to and looked around, my brother was right there. And I remember I said it again, like, I broke my leg. And he just looked at me and goes, yeah, you did.
And he comes up, and the first thing he says as his head gets above the water, I broke my leg. That was the first words out of his mouth. instantly Joe, his brother, sprung into action and sprinted towards him. I yelled, "Drop the paddle, I got the paddle."
And then he crawled up on his board, and I was pretty shocked, like, oh, that's like, he broke that part of his leg. Because I was immediately shocked it wasn't his ankle, his shin, or his knee. And it was just like upper thigh, femur bone.
And Joe grabs him and helps him in. Now meanwhile, his leg, his femur is snapped in half. So every wave that hits him, his leg is like, you know, it's ragdolling, which is more than unpleasant, I'm sure, for Anthony, and insanely painful. But the task at hand was to get to the beach.
First thing was, if we're in the water, we can't get saved. So my immediate thing was like getting him on his SUP and just ditching the paddle. And as soon as we could get in, the better, because when we're surfing that far end of Cottons, it goes straight into the train track rocks.
Whoa.
A wave came by us. We went under it. Someone surfed by us too. And then Joe tried to push me on a wave, and he's like, all right, well, you got to get to shore. I'm going to push you on this one. And he gave me a big boost. And I'll never forget the feeling of like my leg bouncing before I got into that wave. And I just said no, and I put the brakes on. You can see in the video, like I stopped from catching the wave. I totally could have caught it. And I just knew my leg was dangling too much. I just couldn't catch the wave. So we were paddling again. We're still
and when he popped up, he didn't look good, but I thought he was just bummed he didn't get it. Like, I thought maybe he broke his board and he was pissed off about it. Like, he broke his board. I'm just filming him coming. I thought nothing was wrong. And yeah, I just thought he was just bummed he didn't get it. And then he starts throwing up the call 911. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check this out. Because I thought he was good. So I had to go over there and see what was up.
going. And then as we're getting close to the shore, some guy came like right up to us. And it didn't seem like, it was almost like, get out of my way. And all of a sudden Joe's like, he's hurt. And the guy went from being like, I don't know, he seemed really helpful in the end. And he started helping us. So it took him, Joe, Gwyn, and Jay to get me out of the water. 4 people to get me out.
That was probably the gnarliest part, was getting Anthony off of his stand-up paddleboard onto the sand. Because by the time we got to shore, it was just the cutoff to where we would have been trapped in the rocks.
If he drifted, because he was drifting down, if he drifted 10 more feet, we would have been totally just stuck in the rocks and probably had to drift all the way down to the next beach to get him out.
And finally, Anthony makes it to the beach with Joe, and their videographer comes in, and a couple guys come down. They help him up onto the sand. I get up onto the sand, and Anthony is right up against the rocks, and it's a building swell and a building tide, so we knew this wasn't a place that he could hang out for long.
I just pretty much propped him up against a rock in the splash zone, so when we got him out of the water, we could only get him far enough out to where the waves were still like splashing him and just covering him with sand.
This is gonna be a little rough. I could feel his leg like just total jello. Like he was saying the leg was hitting him in the back when he was in the water.
Lifted Anthony up and we tried to get him to the dry sand, but the pain was insane. You can imagine the bone's broken, the leg is just hanging there. It was just too much. He had to lay down again. So
Like, okay, we can't do that. Like you almost went from like normal to like very ghosty.
him down, and I sprinted down to the shack. I was going to tell somebody to call 911, but they were already on it.
Unfortunately, Gwyn destroyed his cell phone in the process of saving Anthony, or at least getting him out of the water.
Clothes, two sweaters, my broken ass phone. I had 2 earbuds and then I had one when I got out, so the other one's I caught in somewhere if you guys find it.
Actually, people in the hut, as soon as I sprinted down there, they were already like calling 911, trying to get someone down, which even on the phone it seemed quite complicated. They didn't just send a message straight to the lifeguards. They had to do a little bit of calling around.
They tried to move me, and we just knew it wasn't possible to get me out of the water zone without a board. I just knew I had to be like on something to stay on my leg. I was telling them.
So somebody brought a surfboard down. We laid Anthony on the surfboard.
But Shortboard was checking out what happened and was asking if he could help, and he sacrificed his surfboard so we could use it as a backboard.
And he's kind of directing us, twist my leg this way, twist it that way, to try to alleviate that pain.
If we didn't hold his foot upright, it would just flop over to the side, pivoting from the femur.
Eventually we got him up on the surfboard. We were able to carry him about 100 yards further south to where there was a little more sand.
Yards. I remember everyone telling me like, how much do you weigh? Like, I mean, there was 6 of them carrying me on the board too, but I mean, I weigh a lot. I was soaking wet, and I was writhing in pain, so it probably wasn't very easy to help me. And I remember they put me down. Gwyn was like trying to hold my leg and put rocks under it just to stabilize it or keep anything from it flopping over. Flopping over was like the worst thing ever.
We took turns kind of supporting the break.
Pretty much trying to keep Anthony warm, got him towels, try to give him some water, try to keep him calm.
It was just a matter of trying to manage his, level of pain and, anxiety. I mean, that's anybody's going to be flipping out when they know their leg is broken.
I was like, don't go into shock, dude. Like, stay with us. And I had everyone on a hand. Like, my brother was right there on my hand, like, so long. And that guy Vince was holding my hand.
Probably in the back of his mind, through all that agony, that, man, my livelihood is in jeopardy now. What am I going to do?
And Vince wanted to say a prayer. He asked me super politely. He's like, hey, can I say a prayer? And I'm like, yes, dude, do what you can. And like, most heartfelt prayer I've ever had with anyone in my life. Like, just perfect, simple, to the point. Amen.
Mark Voigt brought down a blanket and put it on Anthony.
Mark Voigt ran over, got me a couple blankets, towels, whatever it was. And that was huge too, because pretty much from then, I only was just biting down and holding on to people's hands. I just remember biting and holding was the only thing keeping me sane and in the moment for passing out.
Waited for the lifeguards to get there. It took, I want to say, 20-25 minutes before we finally had a lifeguard truck down there.
Another 20-30 minutes from that, we got the lifeguards over.
The lifeguard got there. I don't know why, but he parked so far away. He didn't just whip the truck as close as we could have.
Laying down, looking down the beach and seeing the car, like, I had super tunnel vision. So it just seemed like the truck was just a mile away. I'm like, what are they doing? The guy's just running over with his little bag. And I'm like, dude, I'm so hurt. Like, what's this bag gonna do?
Questions they asked seemed like good, but a little irrelevant after they asked him 100 times, like, what's his name, to make sure he's conscious. But I was trying to talk to them like, hey, he does not have a head injury or a spinal injury. We just needed to get his leg like stabilized and get him off in an ambulance.
He started running through all these protocol questions, and I was just telling him, like, dude, my leg, like, get me out of here. And like, get me on the backboard, get me out of here. And he's like, you just gotta chill, gotta be mellow. I'm like, all right, like, fine.
They kept trying to brace it crooked and like not tight enough, and
It did splint his leg, and that looked weird to me, man. They had this sort of nylon webbing and these fiberglass poles that all hooked together. It looked really ghetto to me. I don't know.
He proceeded to like try to cut my wetsuit off. They used some little jank scissors, didn't do anything, so they just started ripping at my suit, pulling it out, and they like tucked it in under my butt, which in hindsight like made me pretty uncomfortable. And they put on some sort of weird traction split. Like, I don't know what it was. It looked like crap. It felt like crap. The dude wasn't necessarily hurting me, but it wasn't making me any more comfortable.
Go to do something, they kind of just like manhandled the leg, and Anthony was just in so much pain. It was so hard to watch. I was just thinking, like, if this was me, I could not handle it. I would have tapped out at that point. Like, it was intense. It was really, it took a long time to get him situated.
And you know, I was just thinking, give this guy some morphine, man. He needs pain relief immediately. But you know, for whatever reason, I'm not an EMT. I don't know what the protocol is there, but they eventually lifted him up, put him in the back of the pickup truck, and a couple more vehicles came down to kind of help out or assess.
They used that surfboard as a backboard even into the lifeguard truck.
I think we just kept him on the board. We didn't even put him on a gurney or anything. He was just on a surfboard.
Rangers coming over, other lifeguards, and then they decided, okay, they're like gonna move me, and then they lifted me again and put me in the truck, if I think I remember. So much happened.
Put him in the truck, put a traction splint from like his thigh to his ankle to stabilize the leg.
So they moved me on the truck, on the surfboard, down the beach towards the trestle, but still didn't take me to the road. They kept me on the beach.
Sideways down the beach in a weird way that they couldn't just drive the truck up the sand dune. So they had to switch him from the surfboard and the first lifeguard truck to a backboard and a different lifeguard truck, and then for some reason had to redo the traction splint again, which I imagine was insane. But at least by now they gave him some sort of painkiller like fentanyl or something.
Other EMS were Pendleton EMS now, trying to take over from the lifeguards, and they were all deciding, like, handing off like who was gonna do what, and no one knew, no one was helping. It was just like, it was just a big standstill. And I remember this one guy came up. I remember seeing him in the lineup too. He walked up and he goes, "Hey, I'm an ER trauma doctor. Is there any way I can help?" And the paramedic looked at him and goes, "I'm a paramedic." A weird battle between all these guys. Like, I didn't know who, no one knew who was doing what, it seemed like. It was just a big mess of priority.
Once he was in the second lifeguard truck, that was where he got like finally like saved and brought over to the ambulance.
They finally got him on the truck and started wheeling him over to where the paved part of the road is. That's a bumpy ride, man, so I'm sure it couldn't have felt too good.
So they drugged me because I was so unreasonable and screaming, you know, and I had less people to hold on to at this point because I was in the back of the truck. It was awkward. They gave me a nose fentanyl dose. It worked for like 5 minutes or whatever. They ended up giving me another one, brought me in the truck under the trestle, still on this guy's surfboard in their truck. And I swear this was the second truck I was in, still on a surfboard, and I don't even know what's on my leg. It just hurt like hell.
I wanted to make sure that everybody got their stuff, and you know, Anthony had his stuff down there, his bike, his brother was there, but Joe managed to load everything on one bike and the paddle and everything and chug it up the hill.
I collected all of his stuff. I put his SUP on my surf rack, my surfboard, his paddle, rode my bike all the way to the house.
I was just trying to get my wet clothes to the car. Joe was helping me carry stuff up, and an hour total till he was in an ambulance, and then I think he kind of just chilled in the ambulance for a while too before he got to the hospital. Everything kind of took a long time. I like, God, the amount of pain, I would have been so over it. Like, people asking, like lifeguards asking questions, where are you at, what's your name? You know, they got to do it, but oh my God, that would have been so frustrating to deal with.
Now we're at the bottom of Trestles, right where the trail dumps out, and now they've decided they're going to transfer me from a surfboard to a backboard. Painful transfer. Set me down on it, put me in the back of a different truck. I think this was an EMS specific paramedic truck. I just remember being in the most pain ever in the back of this truck, and this lifeguard had me by the head, trying to hold my head down for me to be mellow with my arms kind of like this, just to relax. And I was just writhing because it hurt so bad. busted out of his arms, looked up, and my leg was flopped over sideways. So they were trying to do some new traction again, whether it was the second or third traction. I really can't even remember because I was so out of it and just remember being in so much pain. And I screamed, "Why is my leg sideways?" And like, fix my leg, fix my leg. And I slammed back down because I was just like, ah. And they moved my leg back. They go, "Is that better?" I'm like, "Of course it's better." Like, it felt so much better instantly. EMS guy who was in the back of the truck holding me kind of was like, "All right, my job's done holding this guy's head. He's chill now," or whatever. And he goes to get out of the truck, climbs out the side, and with his right boot, it hit the side. He gave it like a kick. Boom! All sand just covered my face. And I remember it was like so much sand that it like filled my eyes. And I just had tons of sand on me, my mouth, the whole deal. And I was already covered from getting splashed the entire time, like such a splash fest. And just being sand in it, that they like squirted off and did the worst job. I just remember having sand teeth, like the chumpy, crunchy thing. Like, gosh, that was so bad.
By the time I went back to the top of the hill, the ambulance was just coming up the hill. So if you get hurt at Trestles, just know it's going to be an hour to 2 hours before you get out of there.
Whoa. Whoa.
Handled it well, but I kind of feel like we handled it better than the lifeguards. They did good, but I don't know. It just didn't seem very urgent. Like, I felt like they were taking care of a stingray wound, not like a broken femur. You know, I was trying to be really careful with it, but yeah, the boys did 6 or 7 of us. No way I would have done it alone. That would have been impossible. Like, we had 2 people taking him out, about 4 people helping him get on the board. Once we got him to the truck, there was like 6 people helping out.
And eventually the ambulance came, and as I rode past, I saw Anthony in the back of the ambulance, and I shot a quick video of Anthony throwing the shotgun. I'm sure that was the last thing he wanted to do, but I got the shot, sent it to Anthony later that day, and I was stoked to hear he made it to the hospital and got into surgery like the same afternoon. And I got to tell you, the epilogue of all this is that there was no question in my mind a guy like him that's in the surf every day, super fit, is going to recover faster than the doctors predict. And from what I've seen so far, we're now 5 weeks out from the injury. I see him walking on the beach, even diving in the ocean, walking and putting that leg to use, and I suspect he's going to be back in the lineup before the end of August, maybe. So I'm trying to catch as many waves as I can before he's back out there, because once he's out there, that's going to cut my wave count in half. Just kidding. We miss him out there. The place in the lineup is always there, obviously, for him, and we'll be stoked to see him back in the water.
Oh, A+, dude. Perfect.
I saw the ambulance go up the hill. I talked to Gwen, gave him back all of his wet clothes, and proceeded to drive up to Mission Hospital. So I want to say the injury happened at 9 o'clock a.m., something like that. I want to say it was like 10 o'clock by the lifeguard getting there the first time. It was 11 o'clock by the time he got in the ambulance, and then probably wasn't at the hospital. It's like 11:30 something, maybe even later, because when I pulled up to Mission Hospital, they were just like pulling the ambulance around. And I mean, I took some time. I had to call friends and family, call Reese, call my parents, just let everybody know what happened. And it was kind of a bummer because they made it difficult to visit him, so I brought his like clothes and all that stuff. But fortunately, we had a familiar face as our nurse in the ER, and she just like, hey, don't bother going through them, I'll let you in the front door. So I could see Anthony as soon as he got into the emergency room. And when he's in the emergency room, he's in surprisingly good spirits, and I just pretty much comforted him until Reese got there, and then my parents were on their way, and then we traded shifts to just sit and hang out with him until later that night. He had surgery, so pretty good. I think that's why he's on a pretty good road for recovery, to have his injury and surgery on the same day. And it was a pretty intense event that seems like a freak accident, but I'm glad he's okay, and I think he's gonna recover well and probably be out in the water in like just under like 3 months. So I'm glad I was there. It was pretty scary, but if it would have happened any other way, it probably would have been a lot worse. I'm glad I caught that first wave and I was right there to help him. I kind of now think about surfing alone and always at least having somebody at least know that I've gone surfing, or definitely go with somebody, just because you never know what kind of freak accident can happen, even doing something like a top turn floater that we do on routine. So yeah, that's pretty much what I remember of like Anthony's injury, and yeah, I'm glad everything's okay. It was traumatic. I went and surfed that evening. I went and picked up his bike. I walked down and had kind of a weird session, knowing he was getting surgery in like a couple hours, but might as well get a session in and bring his bike home. But yeah, after that, took a little break from surfing, took like 3 weeks off. It's kind of didn't feel like it, but it's good to be back in the water. I'm surfing again, and yeah, I look forward to seeing my brother back out there with me.
They finally put me in the ambulance, but then it wasn't in. I was so stoked. I'm like, ambulance, we're out of here. You know, 5 minutes went by, they were on the radio, they were going back and forth. Then Jay Riel came by the ambulance, took a picture, I threw him a shaka. Best I could do. He's like, I'll see you soon, dude. A few minutes after that, they shut the doors of the ambulance. They're about to leave. I was in a lot of pain. They gave me more meds and hooked me up to an IV. And they were still going back and forth on the radio, and they tried to take me to Scripps in San Diego, which is an hour away. And then they went back and forth, back and forth. The lady was saying I wasn't enough of a trauma victim, I wasn't bleeding, all this different stuff. And they finally got through to her to take me to Mission. And I was like, okay, like this is awesome. You know, the guy who was in the ambulance with me was one of the best people that I dealt with the whole day. You know, he was really, we're fighting for me to go to Mission. And I rode with him in the ambulance. And the ambulance ride was, you know, bumpy, painful the whole way. Going up the Trestles Trail was bad. And even the freeway bumps were pretty brutal too. But I remember as soon as we got to the hospital, I was still pretty ballistic, a little emotional, coming down from all the other meds. And one of the surf team kids, his mom was working in the ER. And, you know, I saw her, instantly saw her. She made it known that it was her. I remember giving her like a big hug and had her hold my hand for a long time. I just remember she was like the most comforting person for me to see. There was a guy, Dale, in there who works in the ER who surfs at cons. So he was super cool. He's like, oh, it's you, you know. So it was a really comforting thing once I was in the hospital. It felt like everything was going to be fine. I remember getting back from CAT scan, and they're like, hey, your surgery's going to be today at 6 o'clock. I'm like, wow, it's 6 hours from now, because I think it was like 12:15 or 12:30 at this point. But they ended up moving it up. I got into pre-op at like 4 o'clock, and off we went. I knew the pre-op guy too. He was someone who actually surfs cons as well. And then my anesthesiologist lives on my street. Even when I was at the hospital, I was sandy the entire time. And even going into surgery in pre-op, I was still covered in sand. And my anesthesiologist goes, dude, like, you're covered in sand. I'm like, dude, no one did anything about it. I've just been this whole time. He's like, all right, we'll get you cleaned up. So they put me asleep and then cleaned me. So I was covered in sand from 8:45 a.m. to 4:45 p.m., which was insane. I mean, I had sand on my scalp when I got home and showered 2 days later too. So what a sandy hospital experience. I probably brought the most sand in that hospital anyone has ever brought. So it was like kind of like a family affair in the hospital. Once I was in the hospital, everything was fine. Before that, it was a really tough nightmare. So yeah, right out of the hospital, I remember coming out of surgery, super sick, puked my brains out, passed out, came to in the room. Reese was sitting right there. My parents were right there. They're like, hey, you're gonna be fine, everything's cool. Like, they're good with the surgery. They said it was good. And that was pretty much all history from then. Pretty much that began the day zero of recovery. Been working hard since. They had me do PT right away in the hospital. Like they got me out of bed, had me start walking and using the metal leg. Had like no movement in it essentially. I really was just stuck with a straight leg. And what is today? Today is July 9th or 10th. So we're 5 weeks out from it. We're now in the 6th week. So it's been a long time. I've regained a lot of motion and we're on the path to recovery. So I cut that out. Here, let's do some leg stuff. But still, it's just one day at a time, 1 degree. You know, I've been pushing hard to be on like the record recovery program, but just time takes what it is. So we'll see. I think in a perfect world, I'll be surfing in 3 months. But who knows? Some of the PT people aren't as optimistic, but all the pros are optimistic. Tony Hawk got on a skateboard after doing the same thing as me. He's in like week 16 now. I'm only in week 6, and he was skateboarding at 9 and 10 weeks. So maybe in 3 and 4 weeks from now, I might be able to get on a surfboard on a soft top and surf some small waves like Doheny or get used to it. So we'll see from there. And you know, thanks everyone for the support. I will be back out sooner than later.
Looks great.
Second job, gonna be with it. I love it. I love it. Good job, boys.
Floater Joe kombucha. It's delicious.